Hey, this is part of our Gardening for Beginners series, and what we're talking about in this is what to plant in the spring in Zone 7, and I'll follow that up in this video with a conversation about frost dates, which is when to put your plants out. You have to watch the whole thing, of course. Now, Zone 7 stretches from Delaware down, so I guess for you that's this way, but you get the idea. Delaware down into Virginia, it's most of eastern Virginia, and it cuts right through North Carolina, and down east on the coast is Zone 8, mountains are Zone 6. So then, and there's a little piece of it in South Carolina, like southwest of Charlotte, but then it's most of Tennessee, it's northwest Georgia, North Alabama, North Mississippi, and then it kind of cuts through Arkansas at the top, Oklahoma in the east, top of Texas, and then down in like southeast New Mexico, and then it's scattered as you go around the Rockies and the West Coast. There's pockets of it here and there. So if you're in that zone, this is particularly meant for you, but you can adjust it for Zone 6 and 8. But 8 is obviously an earlier start, 6 is a later start. So this is being presented in April, right? We're about 10 days in the spring. And what I'm going to talk about is what to plant in the spring. Now, I have my own chart here of my planting schedule, and I'm in Zone 7, Zone 7B actually, right in the center part of North Carolina. And this is based off of a seeding chart from Wyatt Quarles, who sells seed from North Carolina to Richmond and down to Atlanta. So it's regional. You can't buy it online. You get it from distributors, and they're selling seed that's meant for this area. Okay, so when I'm talking about these plants here, they're going to grow in Zone 7. That zone is based on minimum low temperature, so it's basically talking about hardiness of plants. Now, at the beginning of April, of course, you're already past the planting, for the most part, of your cool season crops, but there's still some you can start with seed. According to my journal, you got your radish and your turnip. They both grow quickly, and you can lay that seed out up to the 15th. And then in March, which is behind us now, but some of this goes to the 15th, like kohlrabi, you can still put that seed out. But the rest of this list here in March is Chinese cabbage, kale, kohlrabi, leaf lettuce, and mustard. Those items are to be seeded in March, okay? So if you're a beginner, if you go to a nursery, you can look for these items. They're already started. That's probably the best thing to do if you're in April in Zone 7, is just buy starts at your nursery. You know, they'll be like 2 to 4 inches, okay? Instead of starting seeds in April, because these are cool season crops. They're going to bolt when it warms up, so you don't want to start seed in April for something that's just going to bolt, do you no good. But in April, with seeds, beans, corn, cucumber, zucchini, summer squash, winter squash, watermelon, and then tomato plants. Now, you can start with seed because we're in a long growing season in Zone 7, but you know that's going to delay your harvest, right? So you probably want to buy starts at this point from your nursery, but you can just start with seeds if you want to. You could plant those out to the middle of July. So that's what you would do in April. And then the last large month in May, you can get your lima beans going or your butter beans. Throw your eggplant out, sweet pepper, hot pepper, sweet potato slips. So this eggplant, sweet pepper, and hot pepper, again, for new gardeners, you can get those as starts. But if you're in April, you could start that from seed inside and save a little money on your input. And then right at the end of spring, you can throw some pumpkin seed out in June, middle of June. So that is essentially what you want to start in the spring. course, you can just go to your nursery. They're going to be selling what you can start in the spring, but they may not have everything I just mentioned on here. And so you can go to your nursery and get this stuff, and they're going to be selling what you can plant now, of course. But some of that stuff is going to be seed that it might not be the right time to put seed in if it's cool season. Again, because it will bolt before you get enough of the produce to harvest. But that's it on what you could put out in the spring. Now the next question is when. So you probably heard about frost dates, and frost dates are tricky. I know people that still don't understand it, what it means, but the frost date, like where I'm at, the frost date is April 17th. How do I know this? I'll go to NOAA, okay, which is part of the Department of Commerce. Now, the frost dates are kind of related to the zone dates, but they're not the same thing. So the frost date, when you hear typically they say last or average, that's the 50% point. So there's a 50% chance after that date you're still going to get a frost, which could damage young seedlings, okay? So what you really need to do, new gardeners, have an app on your phone or check it on your computer. Look at your 10-day forecast every day at this point in the year so you can see what those overnights are going to do. Now the good thing about that frost date, the freeze possibility is less, 32. That's like 20%. And then the deep freeze, 27 degrees and below, that's less than 10%. Now keep in mind, the NOAA, the data is based on 1981 to 2010, and they published the latest update in 2019. So the latest update is 3 years old, and the data they used is 12 years old. That's why you need to check your weather, your 10-day forecast. Can't really trust that. We've had some surprise freezes back-to-back years here in 2020 and 2021. And one of them was Mother's Day in May. So you need to keep an eye on what's going to happen. Your cool season crops, they're going to be okay for the most part, unless it's a deep freeze. But your young seedlings and starts, for plants you're putting in the spring to harvest in the summer, you need to cover those up to make sure they don't get wiped out. And they all have different levels. Some stuff doesn't do well under 40 degrees. It doesn't have to be a frost, but I don't know what you're growing. You're just going to have to look it up yourself, right? But anyway, there's a zone that dictates what you can grow, and then there's frost dates that dictate when you can grow it. And that's pretty much what you do. Good luck to you. If you have any questions, drop them down there.